record this so I can make sure that I have record of this and throw it up online or something like that. So I sent you the article from Golf Digest talking about strokes gained, sort of mental attitude. And I thought it was interesting because it really conveyed an interesting point about there's not one right way or wrong way of thinking on the golf course, right? There are going to be some guys who are going to be very, for lack of a better term, fiery. You know, they're going to be emotional. They're going to really, you know, have kind of those ups and downs. But then you're also going to have people who are like Dustin Johnson, like very easygoing, very sort of like differential, like they let things go. And even within that, there's a huge spectrum. And so what I want to start with is for each one of us in the room, who is your sort of mental role model? And more importantly, why are they your mental role model? Like what aspects of their sort of attitude, what aspects of their sort of behavior is something that you sort of inspire to work toward?
All right, I could start if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I think for me it's like probably a little bit of Jordan Spieth and a little bit of Rory. I think Jordan. I like how he talks a lot. Like he basically talks whatever he's feeling or whatever it is, and that's like a good way for me to deal with the situation and like kind of accept it. And I like how Rory kind of rides momentum and yeah. So
okay, so tell me a little bit about more with Jordan Spieth. Like, why do you think sort of talking or bringing up like how he's feeling is a valuable sort of skill to have?
I think with bad things so unfortunate events happen, right? You hit a shot in the water, whatever it is. I feel like he does a really good job of, he's like, oh, darn, or whatever it is. And, it just helps him, I feel like, accept the situation that just happened and then say, okay, let's like that positive self-talk to get you, back in line, focusing on the next shot or focusing on the next opportunity or whatever it is. So
Totally. Yeah. I mean, this is a little bit of what we talked about last week, right? Where it's okay to acknowledge when bad things happen. It's okay to acknowledge that you feel uncomfortable, that you don't feel perfect, that you don't feel right. I think where people sometimes struggle though is they get stuck in that sort of that circular thinking where it's like, I feel bad, so it means that I'm not going to play well or hit a good shot. And then it kind of leads them down a bad path. But if you can just acknowledge it, say, hey, I'm not happy, or I don't feel good, or this is a difficult shot, but then refocus on improving your present space, I think that'll go a really long way to helping you kind of feel those comfortable feelings. So excellent job, Alex. All right, who's next?
Go ahead, Ash.
No, go for it.
Oh, okay. So I'd say I'm kind of a mix of like Rory and then like Dustin as kind of my role models, and Rory just kind of like I struggled with this like a lot, like when I was playing like more competitive, like in high school and all that stuff, and I struggled with not staying like patient and just kind of getting like ahead of myself, like, and not like just focusing on putting myself in position every time or like giving myself a chance to like do something like really good. And I would just kind of get ahead of myself and get upset. But I think Rory does a really good job of like, he's in position, he puts himself in position like all the time to like do stuff. And a lot of times like he's like, I mean, even recently, like I think it was like the end of like 2018 or something, he was just like riding a bunch of momentum, playing really well, but he would never win. And he said it was kind of frustrating, but he acknowledged that and just kept putting himself in position. And then he ended up being player of the year the next year. So it's like, and winning like the FedEx Cup. So I mean, it's pretty like amazing to see that. And then like DJ, just like the dude has like such a short memory, it's ridiculous. So like he literally like lost the US Open, he 3-putted to lose to Spieth at Chambers Bay, and like I felt like it's really, really hard to recover from something like that, but like mentally. But I mean, he did just an amazing job of doing that, and I really admire like how he rebounded from that and then came back and won it the very next year. So it was like just
right.
crazy.
And what's interesting about that is he had a similar issue from a rules perspective, right? So he's leading the US Open after blowing it the year before, and then there's a huge ruling where they're like, well, you may be penalized, you might not be penalized. Like, we'll tell you at the end of the round. And to be able to just say, all right, kind of F it. Like, I'm just going to go back to my job and do what I need to do to hit this shot as close as I can and play each of these holes to the best of my ability. That takes a lot of skill. And so I think that the ability to rebound is huge. So really, really good. Go ahead, Ash.
I think what works best for me is I really liked what I read about Webb Simpson and what he sent us. Just how he'll talk about a shot after with his caddy if things didn't go to plan, and he has like 30 seconds or so, and he talks about it there and then after that 30 seconds, it's all done. It's eliminated from the memory bank. So I like that aspect, and I like in general guys, and this is how I want to be, and I think I am, where there's no issues having the camera on them or having them be mic'd up. PGA Tour isn't worried about any foul language or like any kids watching back at home. So I like that aspect. A couple of guys that I thought of in addition to Webb Simpson was like Brant Snedeker and Justin Rose. I see them. They talk maybe a little bit more than Webb Simpson, or maybe show a little bit more frustration. Like Webb Simpson seems like he's the nicest guy on earth. I think those guys could show a little bit more frustration, but they all have really good attitudes, and you don't see them ever carry it to their next shot.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, it's interesting because the interesting part about that article is like they did like very wide comparisons, right? Like, the stereotype is, oh, you have to be like super optimistic or super positive or super like cheery, and they talk about Matt Kuchar, and it's like, all right, cool, like that is an aspect for some people, and it's good to have that sort of happy-go-lucky, cheery, like happy perspective. But in the same respect, like, yeah, if you hit a bad shot, like being able to get frustrated and then move on is huge as well. So really, really good. Scarlett, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it would be Annika. I just really like her mentality of like, even when she was gonna shoot her 59, she was always like, I'm gonna do this shot by shot, just fairway, and then I'll get the green, and then we'll just like go from there. I like the simplicity of her like mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I can relate to that a lot. The less I think, I guess, the better it goes for me. So I just really like that.
I like it. And, it kind of reminds you too when she, played on the men's tour for the couple of events.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, that's a huge sort of like mental hurdle to try and overcome, where I still just need to simplify the game, right? I need to put the ball in the fairway. I need to put the ball in the green. I need to try and make a putt. And remember that, it's a different game, but at the same respect, it's the same game. And so really trying to simplify the game as much as possible is huge. So excellent. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I really like what Scarlett just said there. I mean, I would say I'm not really a fan of the guy, but Brooks Koepka he's just like takes it one shot at a time, and it's just like if something goes wrong, it is out of his brain, that's a lot easier said than done. But going back to like what Scarlett said of like being simple, I'm like the epitome of not simple. So it's like I idolize that a lot. That's definitely something that I'm trying to put into my life and my business, is just simplify things, make it easy. Now, with some of the things that you had talked about like being like kind of like happy and go lucky, stuff like that. Like I actually do like that. Like I would definitely like to be that type versus like, showing the frustration, because I think that I think it's very hard for me to control that. So it's like, hey, you know what? Let's try and keep that kind of like happy kind of attitude, and that is something that I can do really well. So kind of basically just like playing to my strengths, but then yes, really trying to like work on simplifying things, which I really liked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because like you have to be authentic. And
Yeah.
one thing about athletes, and this is something that I've learned in working with a lot of high performers, is they can smell bullshit really quick, right? And so if you come in and you try and tell them something that you think that they want to hear, or that, oh, I've done this or I've done that, and you can't back it up, you immediately lose their trust, you immediately lose their respect. But if you go out there and you say, hey, honestly, I don't know the answer to that, like I need some guidance from you, in a lot of ways that engenders trust. And so the same way here with a mental attitude, if you're naturally like a happy-go-lucky person, if you're naturally somebody who gets joy in doing things, trying to go out there and be very stoic and steadfast and hyper focused, it's uncomfortable, and you're going to feel uncomfortable.
It's taxing.
It's mentally fatiguing, and so you're going to struggle to do that. The same way that if you take somebody like John Rahm, right, who's very fiery, very like, he lets things kind of get under his skin. If you try to go out there and say, oh, hey, John, like, don't worry about it, like, it's fine. Well, no, he's not going to be able to do that because that's his intrinsic personality. That's who he fundamentally is. But within those fundamental characteristics, there's always sort of massaging. There's always room for sort of growth. And so I'm actually glad that you kind of brought that up, because that brings me to my next question. So we just talked about, all right, what are our sort of ideal mental attitudes? What are the areas that are lacking mentally for us? What do we think that we can improve upon in terms of those ideals that we've set for ourselves?
Well, I'll start. I'll just go off what I said, is like being able to like slow down, or like being able to slow down. Like that's something that's very difficult for me to do. Everything is like bang, bang, bang. Very difficult for me to focus. And so that's definitely something that I can work on.
Okay. What about you, Scarlett? We'll just go backwards the way that we went through it.
I would say just like gaining momentum. It doesn't really relate to the simplicity, like the mindset that I was talking about before. But I feel like when I start, it's really hard for me to gain momentum at the beginning of a tournament, like the first day and stuff like that.
Okay.
It really takes me a longer time. And also I have to work more on my mindset of just, if I hit one bad, then it's fine.
Okay. Ash?
I like what Joe said about slowing down, especially when, like in a tournament, when a couple things go wrong after another, just being able to slow down and digest what happened. I think also keeping it simple, being decisive, and then not carrying past like shots with me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Derek?
I think like the main thing that I've struggled with recently is just I've been focused too much on like the end result and not so much on like the process of everything. And I really feel like I've improved on a lot of stuff, but that's still one thing that I think this time, like just being like not able to do anything else but focus on the process is gonna actually be really beneficial to me. And I can just kind of practice like just going through things like one thing at a time, like just building off of each day rather than like I mean, obviously it's good to set goals, but just don't be so like caught up in the goal that you forget about like the steps to get to that goal.
I like it. Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Derek in that aspect, and I think part of the like I would say the overall struggle that I've had is kind of jumping off like the bad momentum, like resetting sort of thing. So, like Scarlett said, I struggle in the beginning of tournaments. I feel like to get me kind of rolling, and if a couple bad things happen, it's kind of difficult for me to, I guess, bounce back, because I think I'm too result oriented at the beginning. Like I'm not thinking about like simplifying the game and stuff like that, and so, kind of all those things where you just kind of slow down, be like simple, stupid, and like just focus on the process, and things will kind of figure themselves out. So
Beautiful, beautiful. So what I think next is I'm going to kind of go through kind of a list that I came up with. And honestly, this was just me like kind of spitballing. Like when I think about, all right, what are some of like the really important mental characteristics or mental components that jump out to me? These are the ones that kind of jumped out in the forefront of my mind. And I'll kind of explain, why I think they're so valuable and kind of how to improve them. And then what we'll do towards the end is kind of, all right, how do we establish a plan moving forward to try and enhance some of these things? Honestly, the first thing that came to mind for me in terms of a mental sort of competency or a mental component that is super, super valuable, confidence. When you think about the best players in the world, no matter how good or bad they are playing, they never doubt their ability. Or let me rephrase that. They rarely doubt their ability, right? It's the reason why you can have guys who have missed cuts for months on end know that they're putting in the effort, putting in the time, putting in the work, and then one week suddenly they go out and win a tournament, or they have a top 10 or they have a top 5, right? There's never a lack of self-belief. The minute you stop believing in yourself is the minute you're done, right? There are a lot of people who believe in us right now, whether it's, parents, whether it's siblings, whether it's teammates, coaches, family members, whoever it might be. At some point, you may be the only person who believes in yourself. And so you have to always believe that what you are doing is right and what you are doing can lead to success. So I think that confidence is immense. Couple very simple ways to enhance your confidence, especially as it pertains to performance. Past performance success. It is the single biggest influencer of future confidence. So if you can find things that you've done successfully in the past, you can connect that to what you will do in the future or what you can do in the future. Kind of connected to that is how you define success, right? Because if you define success only through results, Alex just happens to be up on my screen right now, so it kind of jumps out. If you only define success through objective results, it's really hard to have that past performance success. But if you can redefine success through more of process-oriented, more effort-oriented, more learning-oriented approaches, it'll go a long way to establishing, hey, I can have continued success day in and day out. And what does that do to your confidence? It sends it through the roof. The next one that I think is really, really important is decisiveness. So I think there is value in analytical thinking. I believe that there's value in sort of working through the scenarios, processing information, all of that. But at some point in time, you have to make a decision. And when you make a decision, you need to be sure of it. It kind of ties back into confidence, right? Because when you are decisive, when you are committed, it is a confident decision. It is a trusting decision. It is a decision that is grounded in, this is the right decision. Whether it is or isn't, you say, this is the path that I'm taking. I am confident or comfortable that this is going to lead to success. You want to tie it back into athletic performance. We know that it relates to higher levels of performance. You want to tie it back into education. We can say that research shows unequivocally that when you are decisive, when you trust your gut, when you rely on your instincts, you do better than when you don't, right? We get in our own way. Our brain sort of overrides our actual ability to process a lot of information. So this one is one that I think is valuable, but even this one I think has kind of changed over time for me. I used to be the person who was like, all right, we need to be super optimistic, super positive. We have to find a way to find the good in everything that we do. Um, I still think that that's really, really important. But I also understand that situationally, you can't always be that. And so sometimes you have to be more of the neutral thinker. You have to look at sort of the objective information and try and make as sort of thoughtful and informed decision as possible and not let the emotions of it sort of overwhelm you. It's really, really difficult, right? But the one thing that we know is negative thinking is really, really harmful, sort of across the board. So at the very least, if we can eliminate negative thinking, that will go a long way to helping us perform better, even if it isn't all the way on the positive, optimistic, hey, everything's going to be cheery sort of side of things. We can at least go, hey, let me deal with the facts. How can I work through this and find a solution? That's much better than, hey, the sky is falling. We're done here. Present focused, you can relate that back to sort of process goals. You can relate that back to a lot of different things, but really, like we talked about last week, the only thing that matters is now, right? We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed a week from now. We're not guaranteed a month from now. So let's get the most out of this moment in time because it may be the last one that we have. Or in, athletic parlance, it's like, hey, I can't take back if I hit a good shot or a bad shot, but I can certainly put myself in a position to help make a good shot. I can certainly put myself in a position to make a good, thoughtful business decision, right? I can't change if I made a bad business decision 6 months ago. So things like that. I think it's important to be competitive, right? Every single one of us, as either an athlete, business person, parent, whatever it might be, you have some intrinsic competitiveness within you. And that's okay, right? It's the reason you get up at 5 a.m. to go to workouts. It's the reason you get up at, 3 a.m. to go take care of your kid, right? Like there's some level of competitiveness. There's some level of, I want to be the best that I possibly can be at this. And I think that that's important because it challenges you, it pushes you. But in the same respect, simply beating people or being better than somebody else is not everything. You always have to strive to improve. You always have to strive to get better. You always have to strive to learn, because I'm a firm believer that over time, simply beating people isn't what matters. It's, can I continue to improve day in and day out? And if I can do that, I'll eventually beat a lot of people. I may not beat them all up front, but I'll eventually in the long run beat them. So what can I learn day in and day out? How can I be better day in and day out? That's going to serve me really, really well.
And that really, if you don't mind, like that really ties into like enjoying the process. So like coming from this perspective, like that was a really big deal for me. Kind of a lot of the same stuff that happens, in business, just like we do, right? You guys all go to school like each day, and it's kind of like the same stuff, and it's like, man, it's kind of boring. But like, enjoying the process, the ups and the downs, like just being like okay with all of them, really kind of ties into that as well. That was something that I really just, even at 33 years old, like just kind of clicked with me, is enjoying that process. And that really helped with a lot of the negative stuff, right? Obviously everybody's stoked when things are going well for them, but like that was big for me.
Oh yeah. That ties into my next one, acceptance, right? Like we have to be able to accept good, bad, ugly. I don't think anybody in this room expected this sort of pandemic to overtake the entire globe. But it's here. And so we have to accept that. And we have to accept the new realities that come as a result of it, right? We have to adapt. We have to do conference calls with athletes to keep them engaged. We have to do Zoom, workouts to keep people engaged. We have to find different ways to hopefully solve these problems. And so you have to accept it. I think it's important to always try your best. It's really hard sometimes when things are going poorly, to always try your best or always give 100%, right? It's so much easier to just kind of phone it in and say, oh, I just want to go get dinner. I want to go get lunch. It takes a great deal of intestinal fortitude, a great deal of like guts to say, I'm going to shoot 100 today, but I'm going to try on every single shot today. Like, it sucks. It really, really sucks. But if you have that ability to give 100% effort no matter what, it's going to serve you really, really well in the long run. And then the last piece is really being highly focused. You know, I think that where I sometimes struggle as an athlete when I play is my mind will be elsewhere. And it's not on the task at hand. It's on work stuff. It's on family stuff. It's school stuff, whatever it might be. And that distracts me from the task at hand. And as a result, I don't play as well as I normally would. So the more focus that I can get on just that moment in time, I mean, that's what it's all about. So, all right, we got 5 minutes or so before we kind of wrap up. What questions do you guys have for me?
I have a question about, so we were kind of viewing these different styles of players, and you know, you got the Spaniards that are really hot, like they run hot and stuff like that. What would that look like? Like, how would that be beneficial? How do they use it, like, beneficially? Are they angry over the shot, or are they like, does that help them focus more on their process? What is that? Like,
Yeah, so think about it like this. Have you ever got broken up with and you wanted to go prove something to that person who broke up with you?
a little bit, yeah.
That's kind of what it comes down to, right? So somebody breaks your heart, somebody screws you over, something bad happens to you. Instead of internalizing and say, oh, woe is me, you say, well, I'm going to prove them wrong. And so the fiery people, they get frustrated, they get angry, and instead of overwhelming the system and saying, I can't perform, they say to themselves, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And so they're able to pull off the shot because they become so hyper-focused on accomplishing what they set their mind to.
So let me ask you this. Could it possibly change? Like, say there are less, you know, maybe you're frustrated because you're not making enough birdies. You're hitting, you know, giving yourself opportunities. Like, you're not going to be that angry because you're making par or whatever it is. But say, like, you know, you got a good round going, then you're like lose some. Would that? What if it's like a different reaction? Like, say you're more angry than you would be. Can you basically change your process based on that, or is it supposed to be like the same all the time?
So, I mean, Tiger's talked about this a little bit where, you know, for him, there are certain things that will really rile him up. And usually for him, it then it almost flips a switch on for him. So in some ways, trying to do the same thing over and over again in this case is actually detrimental, because it's almost like a wake-up call where it's like, oh, I need to do something more. I need to do something better. So instead of, hey, let me try and rile myself up every single shot, every single hole, that's not going to work because it's going to overwhelm your system. You're going to exhaust yourself. But it's like, how can I find those times where, all right, maybe I do have a catalyst here. Maybe I do have something that like sparks this and sort of propels me forward.
Because I feel like feel like we've all had times where we've kind of gotten a little angry during the round, and then all of a sudden, like, we've made like 3 birdies or whatever it is, and but then, you know, all of a sudden, like, you give them back because your intensity is so high. Like, it's kind of a hard thing to deal with, to understand.
It is.
And to kind of step on the gas pedal a little bit and when to hit the brakes. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. And what I would say is this evening, think about some of those moments. Think about some of those times where you've been able to sort of get momentum and what sort of was different between that and when you weren't playing well. And then if you can, think about what then went wrong for you to then lose it. Because if you can sort of kind of compare the two, you might gain some more insight into, all right, how can I try and find that more frequently?
Alex, are you talking about like being like more consistent? Like should we have that consistent mentality like throughout? Or like is it okay to kind of like be up and down?
I'm kind of more on like the up and down sort of thing, but I don't think like I feel like you should be try and be as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
But sometimes there are situations that hit you that you know kind of set off like a
Really
trigger.
throw you off.
Yeah, they throw you off a little bit, and I feel like there's certain situations where sometimes you gotta like ride the waves, if that makes sense, and then there's sometimes where like little things are bugging you, you just need to shrug off. But I feel like sometimes it depends, you know, and I find finding those situations is going to be part of the process, and understanding, you know, having awareness of that kind of stuff. You know?
Totally. Hey, so guys, I'm going to actually have us switch over to a different meeting because this is about to expire. Give me like 2 minutes, use the same meeting code, and you'll be able to get into that same room. I just got to set it up, so hang tight.
Do we leave?
Yeah, you can leave and then just log back in like a minute or two.
Perfect.
All right, cool.